Good evening. I'm Robert Wolsey and was CEO of 3 Commander Brigade Air Squadron during Op Haven. During the advance recce on the 20th of April at Diabica, I suddenly became one of the three-man advance party, together with Graham Kerr, the CEO of 29, and Captain John Spencer from Brigade Headquarters. The next day, John and I hitched a lift in an RAF Chinook to Salopi on the border with Iraq, and we went to look for a suitable site for a brigade concentration area. We found a vast flat field covered in young green wheat, and John Spencer negotiated the purchase of the farmer's crop. Over the next few weeks, the field turned into a brown dust bowl. 8 of the squadron's 12 Gazelles and all 6 Lynx were deployed from Yeovilton, leaving just 4 Gazelles behind for UK tasking. The first 2 Gazelles arrived at Diabica 2 days later by C-130 with Ron Crawford, our senior pilot, and were quickly assembled by our REME technicians. Once we left Diabica, the only radio contact we had was with Cougar, the NATO AWACS aircraft at high altitude over northern Iraq. The first task we were given was to recce our Axis heading east into Iraq. Once we crossed the border, very low level in a Gazelle, we flew over extensive defensive positions and came across a wide range of ex-Soviet bloc equipment, including armor and field guns. We penetrated 60 miles east, as far as Saddam Hussein's Summer Palace and the airfield at Sasenk, recently bombed by B-52s. On day 13, the 30th of April, the remainder of the squadron arrived at Iskenderun in RFA Argus. After a 400-mile flight, they arrived at Salopi just prior to the O Group for the brigade advance into Iraq the next morning. Tow beams and missiles were quickly fitted to the Lynx. By the 3rd of May, the advance had progressed so well that it was time to move half a squadron to the first of our forward operating bases, named Cap Badge, 40 miles into Iraq. 9 days later, the Lynx flight and the remaining Gazelles moved to a second FOB, Breeze Block, whilst the Echelon moved to Workhorse. Our initial support was to the refugee camps high in the mountains on the border with Turkey. Tasking consisted of reconnaissance, liaison flying, necessary in a remote mountainous area with few roads, casevac and underslung loads. In addition to the humanitarian tasking, at least one daily armed recce was flown. This comprised a pair of tow-armed Lynx, later additionally armed with a door-mounted GPMG. Using tactical formation flying, the pair operated 10 miles south of the southern boundary of the safe haven, noting Iraqi troop movements and any changes to their order of battle. The patrols were monitored by the AWACS Cougar orbiting high above and covered by a pair of USAF A-10s. There were particular problems in operating helicopters in these conditions, which combined high altitudes with high temperatures, reaching 47 degrees in June. This was known as high density altitude. The air is thin and great care had to be taken in calculating aircraft payload and performance. Early on in the operation, a US Navy CH-53 had crashed, fortunately without any loss of life, and this wreck served as a timely reminder to our aircrew. Throughout the operation, the 3 BAS REME technicians worked night and day in the open to keep the aircraft serviceable. The REME performed 7 engine changes, 3 main rotor gearbox changes, But most remarkable of all was the first ever B-5 servicing of a Gazelle in the field. This evolution normally takes place in a clean hangar and involves stripping the aircraft down to its basic components and reassembling over a period of about 3 weeks. Here, the technicians worked in the open, stripped to the waist, whilst Rotor Wash blew grit into their eyes and over their tools. However, each component was cleaned, and 3 days later, the completed aircraft took to the air. The REME provided 85% aircraft availability throughout the 12 weeks. We were given authorization to increase the maximum flying rate from 40 to 90 hours per pilot per month. My concern was that the combination of fatigue and the heat might lead aircrew to make a careless mistake in this unforgiving environment. However, the squadron flew 2,320 hours without an accident, carrying a total of 4,200 passengers with 180 hours of armed link sorties. Ophaven dramatically underlined the flexibility of the military helicopter, and the years of training and professionalism invested by all members of the squadron resulted in a successful deployment in demanding terrain and climate.